Hey, everybody, we are live with Office Hours episode number 9 out there today. 9 weeks in a row where we talk about the top topics, 30 minutes of kind of unfiltered me talking about the topics of the week as they go around the military transition, job search, employment, networking, and LinkedIn. And so thank you for joining us, everybody. I really appreciate your support. And I wanted to kind of start off with something different today. I posted yesterday afternoon that I want to do something different for office hours. And I want to take one of the people that participates and puts a meaningful comment in the thread or in the comments that I will offer one free coaching mentoring session. I never charge, but I say free just to make sure people understands that. And so my question for you all today is, if you're in the feed, if you were in here watching, my question is, and Kristen, I know you can give it to your husband. I'll give you credit for that. My question is, why is networking important to the military transition? And so if you followed me for a while, you've got a lot of stuff to work with to come up with the answer to that. But that's what I'm looking for. And so keep that in mind. And if you get a chance through the course of this whole series, if you can answer that question in a meaningful way in the comments, we'll review them afterwards. We'll select one person, we'll announce the winner, and then I'll schedule a mentoring call with them. And I'm looking to do this every week so you can let your friends know at least. So today's episode, I don't want to talk about our sponsors today. I want to give you some great news. So a lot of people don't realize that Hire Military is not a company on its own. It's one of the services of Tenova LLC, Teamwork and Innovation. Tenova is the actual company that Hire Military falls under, right? And so Tenova, we're a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. We do some government contracting on the side and everything else like that. Tenova just formed a joint venture with our great partner, Skillstorm, right? And so Skillstorm is a tech training company. They take people, they train them specific skill sets, and they deploy them on contracts for 2 years in government agencies. What's really exciting about them is that they have a great model where they not only get you the training and certifications. You don't go through the training and certifications unless you have a job lined up on the back end. So by the time you finish their, 3 to 4 month paid training, and then you do 2 years at a government agency working on, a tech platform, you are already skilled and experienced, and it's like straight through the moon. So what I love about this partnership is they have the training, they have the platforms, they have the relationships and the access to all these jobs. And what do we have? We're a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. We have access to the talent. So I'm super excited to see how we could bring more service members, veterans, military spouses into this model and get them working on some of the hardest projects across the entire government. So that's the Tenova Skillstorm joint venture, and it does qualify as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So any of you big company people out there that are looking for a team to come in and help you get that credit and do a great job, just reach out and let me know. All right, so let's get into the topics of the week. I'm going to do my best to get done in 30 minutes. It's always a challenge, though. So my first thing I want to talk about is effort, right? Lucy Robinson wrote a post last week that she had posted a job and she had 47 or 57 DMs, direct messages about the job within about 24 hours. And she was so excited that she was going to get these great candidates. 47 of the 57 were the same message, which is a couple details changed. 47 people used AI to reach out and did not add anything, didn't tailor it, didn't put effort into it. And she posted about it and went a little viral with a lot of people complaining or saying, and I'm like, stop. Right? Like, let's talk about this. If you need to make a hire, who do you want on your team? The person that shows up occasionally, the person that does the least amount of work effort, or do you want the person that always gives their best, that just does their best in whatever they do? And I'll tell you, it's not even close. And so when we talk about effort being a big part of the transition, the job search, I mean, it goes the whole way, right? It goes for the prep, right? How much effort did you put in to prepare yourself for the transition, to network, to understand the industries you're choosing, to understand the companies that are out there, to build relationships and learn more about what people in those jobs do so that you can make yourself look like a best candidate on paper. That's effort. You can't tell me you're a high performer. You are not a high performer if you work till the end of the day, like to the end of your career, did everything up until the end, and then just started, right? I know that hurts a lot of feelings, but no high performer lets it get that far without putting in the work, right? And so you might need to reevaluate how you do this. Let's talk about applications. I get people complaining, well, I'm sending out 200 applications. I can't expect to tailor them all. And I'm like, well, if you're doing 200 applications in 15 different industries, it's going to take you a lot longer. If you put in the effort to identify one industry, one career field, and then you tailor the resumes for that, it's a lot easier. And so there's effort. The third part, let's talk about the tailored resume, right? What looks better? Who's more likely to be hired? The person that puts in the effort to tailor it to that specific job, or the random person that just said what they've done their whole career with no tailoring? I mean, it's clearly going to stand out who is going to be a better hire, who looks like on paper, you know, they can do this job, right? At least to get to the interview. And then the interview. Who does better on the interview? The person that shows up and just tells their stories, or the person that tells impactful stories that align to the problems this company faces, or this hiring manager challenges, or that they have to do in the job all the time? The person that can talk about the corporate values, that can talk about the corporate mission, the person that comes there prepared, or the person that says, well, I applied to 100 jobs. I don't know much about the company. Effort, right? And so, like, my whole life, I did my best for everything I could do, and that's what's gotten me through, right? And the transition is the hardest year of your life for most of you. And so I just say, put in the effort, right? Put in the effort to prepare, put in the effort to identify what you want to do, put in the effort to tailor every resume, put in the effort if you're going to reach out to someone to personalize the message, right? If you send me a message saying, hey, you're a veteran, I'd like to schedule a call, you're not getting a call unless you wrote good comments in today's video, in today's live session. But then there's effort. But if you reach out and you mention my Mastering LinkedIn webinar and something you learned there, or where you watched it at, you comment on a few of my posts, and I start to recognize your name, like Kristen. I've never met Kristen Savvy, right? But effort, right? She comments on my posts. She puts out videos of her own. You know, she engages with us. I feel like I know her because of the engagement. That's effort, right? And so I'm going to tell everyone, evaluate if you're ever phoning in. If you're ever hitting the easy button, I would never use easy apply. I would go to the company's page, tailor a resume, and submit it there. If you hit easy apply, all it does is take your resume and send it over to them. Not your resume, I'm sorry. Your profile in the form of resume and send it over to them, right? You're making people decipher things. It's not tailored. And so don't ever, ever, ever hit the easy button. If you want to message and talk to someone, look at their profile, send them a personal message. If there's someone that's very, very engaged, very busy, you see them all over the place, comment on their stuff for a while until they comment back and recognize you. Then reach out and make the small first ask and see how they respond, right? You know, if you're going to send a message to someone, never just cut and paste everything. Don't use AI. You know, take the time to look at their profile, to look at their content, and write something that shows you put in the effort. Because when we see that you put in effort, there's a much better chance that when we give you something to do or we give you advice, you're going to take it, that you're going to match the effort, right? And that's the key to all of this. So the next part, the probably one of the biggest problems facing the military community is this is what I've done, right? This is what I've done. And there's Olivia prompting me to get answers. Hey, look, if no one answers, if it's just Kristen Savvy answering, then I guess she wins. But this is what I've done, right? I go look at I engage with a lot of service members, especially a lot of senior leaders, officers and enlisted, and they list all these random jobs, or they list all these weird adjectives, servant leader, charismatic, whatever. Like they put all that stuff out there. And I tell them, like, hey, you can't do all of these jobs, right? Like all of these jobs are not going to work. Which one do you want to be? Like, you can't be operations, HR, recruiting. Even if you just say you want to do HR and talent acquisition, there's still two totally different jobs. And so I tell people, like, hey, those are 4 or 5 different jobs. You can't do that. Well, I was an operations NCO, or I was an operations officer. I did all that. I'm like, I got it. You did all that. But that doesn't help you tell us what you're going to do out here, because nobody out here does all of that, right? And we're hiring you to do this job. So when I look at your resume, right? When I look at your resume for an HR manager, if you talk about cultural transformation and leadership and all that, figuratively speaking, right? That's not what HR does, right? For a company our size, HR spends a lot of time onboarding, offboarding, employment law, labor law, state registrations, benefits and compensation, right? All these different things where, you're engaging in supporting the working environment of the company. HR works for the company, not the employees. I hate people to tell that to people. So, a lot of people think I'm a leader, I did evals, and I had employee relations, so I'm going to be HR. Well, that's not what HR does in most places. There's different elements of it. And so what I'm going to say is, instead of saying this is what I've done, you need to figure out what you want to do. Like, what problem are you going to solve for a company? So if you say you're going to be HR, what HR related issue or problems are you going to be solving for that company? Do you know what they are? If you want to be a consultant, right? What are you going to consult on? When I give your resume to a company and say, here, we're going to fix this problem, this is the person I'm sending you. I'm billing you top dollar to send you the best to fix this problem. What is that problem? That's the question you've got to figure out, right? You've got to know what that is. But when you do know that problem and it aligns with work, like HR, when you know what an HR professional, an HR manager, an HR generalist, the benefits compensation, all these different things. If you know what a talent acquisition manager does, you can't say, like, there's a total difference between being a recruiting manager in the private sector, corporate recruiting manager, and a recruiting manager in a third-party recruiter. And there's total difference between the high volume and retained search, right? So which one is it? You've got to figure this out. And so this is why I tell people to talk to people in industry about a day at work, to understand what they do, where they spend their time, what their biggest challenges are, what metrics they track, so that you can accurately reflect this, right? You can tell them what problem you solve, because if they know that you're qualified and that you can solve that problem because you're clearly articulating it, like, you're the best candidate, like that. So let's move on to the third topic. I mean, people operations, you can call it whatever you want, James. Like what you said about HR being more than just evaluations and onboarding. It's why a lot of organizations have adopted the phrase people operations. I mean, I was in people advisory services at EY. Like, it's still the same thing as human capital, right? It's still HR consulting. It's just a different name. So, I mean, yeah, I guess that's what they say. But I mean, again, for me, what are they hiring you to do in HR? That's what you have to understand. And HR is not running teams in a lot of organizations. When I was at ProSphere, if HR got involved in my team or my work, I was like, what the heck do you think you're doing? Get out of here, right? Like, so I'll call you when I need you, when we have problems with benefits, compensation, labor law, hiring or anything like that. Until then, just go away. So, and unfortunately, I've seen that a lot in industry. So, in some ways, it's a thankless job. So just know what you're getting into. It's a fantastic job, but you need to think about that. So let's see. What are the 3 things you believe are most valuable to teach hiring managers when looking over transitioning service resumes for potential positions? So ready for this, Alex? I don't think we teach hiring managers squat. I don't think it's the hiring manager's responsibility to translate or search for the compatibility of a transitioning military recent veteran candidate to a role. I think it is your job to articulate to that hiring manager clearly why you're the best person, why you're the best fit. So we're never going to teach the 94% of the population that never served how to translate our stuff into this job. It's never going to work. Look, I spent 24 years on multiple joint assignments. I've been doing a lot of work with the Navy. I still don't know what all the LCPO, DLCPO, all the different, I think, ensigns. I kind of get the ranks down now. I kind of understand. For the longest time, I didn't know the difference between the rear admiral and the rear admiral, the RADL and the RADM. I learned that, but I still don't understand completely how the Navy works, but I'm learning. But I've been working with the Navy for a while now. And so if a veteran that spent 24 years in service doesn't understand the other services, how can we expect somebody that never has to do that? So I'm going to tell you, it is our job. The best thing I tell hiring managers is, if you don't understand something, if they say something you don't understand, ask. What does that mean? Don't just tune it out. Ask. I was the S3 NCOIC. What is that? What is an S3? Oh, that's the operations. There's 4 primary shops. There's HR, security, operations, logistics. I was in the operations section. We handle the day-to-day activities of an organization this size. In my role, I did this, right? That helps. Unfortunately, a lot of people will just nod and move on. So what I'd usually tell hiring managers is just ask, show interest. All right. So now let's get into the mental aspect of the transition, right? It's a marathon. And so I like to talk timelines for people, just for expectation management, because you start TAP, you're supposed to go to your pre-brief no later than 366 days before your transition, before your separation date. So at minimum, 1 year, 1 day out. And we're telling people to start 2 years out, right? And I think that we're accustomed to having orders 6 months out. And what I'm going to tell people is that you will not likely have a job offer any earlier than 1 to 2 months out, right? So you're going to start your transition process. You're going to hit everything in earnest, and you're going to want to start applying to jobs. You're going to start looking. You're going to see your dream job, and you're 6 months out. You're not qualified. It's about timing, right? The hiring window. Companies post jobs when they need to hire, right? So if we're hiring a role, we post it. If it's an internal role, I can't afford. If you tell me we've got this great person, they can start in 4 months, you know what I'm going to say? If you can afford to wait 4 months, do we need that role, right? There's that question there, is the validity of the requirement, because there's cost associated with all of this. And so most companies, when they post jobs, they need to hire. And you're probably not going to get more than a month, month and a half, 2 months even sounds like long. Hey, we just signed someone. They're going to start. What's today? It's September. Geez, they're going to start in November. Geez, what the hell? Excuse my language. You can afford to wait 2 months before the new recruiter starts or before the new HR person starts. That's a lot, right? And so I tell people that, the hiring window is typically 2 to 3 months. That's first time, 2 to 3 months from the day you can start is a time when you can start applying for jobs, right? And then it's going to take you 1 to 2 months from the day that you start, from the day you apply to the day you start. It's typically going to take 1 to 2 months, right? Because, you're going to go start with the interviews. The interview process is usually going to take more than a week. Let's say 1 to 2 weeks with multiple interviews if you're lucky. And then you're going to have the offer. They're going to make you the written offer. That may take a few days to a week. And then you're going to negotiate, because we don't just accept the first offer that comes. Even if you ask for a bonus or some vacation days or whatever, you're going to negotiate. It's going to push it another couple days, maybe a week when they get it approved. And then they're going to set you a start date for their onboarding, which is probably going to be like 1 to 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out. So right there, that's a quick turn. That's a month and a half, right? And big companies can take longer. So I just want people to realize it is a marathon, and to manage expectations going into it. What I'll tell you is that celebrate quick wins, right? You have a great call with someone. That's a win, right? You learn something new about a company. That's a win. And the goal is for you to create this, for number one, to understand the market, the companies, the people, the requirements for the roles that interest you, and to identify, narrow it down to one field, right? At least one field. And then the other part is, once you have that narrowed down, then you just are in a constant state of expanding your network in that field, expanding your knowledge in that field, right? I tell people you should do, 3 to 5, I would say 1 to 2 informational interviews a week when you're outside of a year, like more than a year. And then I would say 3 to 5 calls a week when you're within 12 to 6 months, and then 5 to 10 calls a week when you're within 6 months, to start to really build that network. And so keep a spreadsheet, make sure you track down who you called, what came out of the meeting, what they told you to do, what your follow-up actions are. Maybe put a reminder of when you want to follow back up with them, because the follow-up is key. But just, don't get depressed or demoralized because you can't apply for a job. You saw your dream job. I will tell you that life is going to throw you curveballs. I've never spoken with an executive, a successful executive, and seen their career go from this to this, right? It's always like, right? So in the end, you'll look back, if you put in the effort and you network and you prepare yourself, and maybe if you talk to someone, they say you need a certain cert, you go get it. If you do all this, you'll find your success. So I've got Jarrett saying, most people are not skilled at doing interviews. What do you suggest people do to ensure they are ready to have the best interview to get the best job? So my tips, first of all, you've got to understand the job, which is hard if you're applying for 5, right? So you've got to apply, let me pause, because I see you have doctoral candidate right there. So let's talk about that for a second, Jarrett. If I hire you for a job that doesn't require a doctorate, when you get your doctorate, do you expect a raise? Or do you expect a different position or title? Right? In most cases, the answer is yes. And if the answer is yes, why would I hire you? Why wouldn't I get someone that's not going for a doctorate, right? So I don't believe in the candidate piece. I would take that off. I think you're going to lose opportunities. People think it's just a temporary job. So now for the interview piece, what I would suggest is that you have to do the exploration to understand the job, right? You've got to know what the job is, what the challenges are, what the pain points are, how they track metrics, and what metrics they track, right? Once you have a good understanding of how someone spends their day, right, then you need at least 5 good stories. I would say probably 7 to 10, but at least 5 good stories that you can tweak on the fly to answer a question about, tell me about a time when. And then you have to practice and practice and practice. And so this is where the interview prep tool really comes in handy. So if you go to Jobs tab on LinkedIn, if you go to Jobs on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the interview prep tool. If you click that, there's the 26 most common interview questions. You can practice, practice, practice. You can watch videos that teach you how to do it, how you should answer that question. You can record yourself and watch it until you get a good answer. And then once you have one you like, you can send it to mentors to review. I'll tell you, when we talk about engaging and follow up with mentors, you could send me a life story, or ask these really hard questions, or ask for a phone call. And yeah, if I know you, I'll do it. But if you send me a 58-second video and say, what do you think? What should I add? Or is this okay? Like, that's 1 minute to watch and like 2 minutes to give you some feedback. Not only did you show me you're putting in the work, not only did I get to see your face, your voice, and your answers to get to know you better, I can engage and give you relative feedback within a few minutes. And the best part about that is you can take that, re-record it, send it back. And now I'm like, oh my God, they're a high performer. Like, they took my advice, they implemented, they're doing great. So they're clearly putting the effort. What else do you need? Right? So it's knowing your stories, it's practicing using the interview prep tool, and really, speaking to the specific problems of the role. So, all right, I'm running out of time. If there's any other questions, Olivia will pop them up. Give me a good one. But let's talk about two other quick topics. One is complaining. Look, we talked about time. We talked about how difficult the transition is. Look, it sucks. One of the hardest parts of the transition is getting used to failure, right? Like, you're used to being a high performer. I was a sergeant major, and I'd been pretty much first promoted my entire career. And I was applying for jobs and I wasn't even getting a call back. And I'm like, what the heck? Do they not know how awesome I am? It's demoralizing. Just the sheer number, and you compound everything else. And there's this habit of people to see a job that they think is written wrong. Like, why does it require a degree? And they complain about the company. Or there's people that felt like they didn't get a good hiring process, or people think companies don't hire veterans. And they feel like they need to say this out. And what I have to tell people is, there's never a situation where somebody complains online and we think, oh my God, that's a great complaint, we ought to bring them in for an interview. Or, oh my God, they're a high performer, right? Or, oh my gosh, I think they'd be cool to hang out with. No. The only people, yeah, they might get a lot of clicks. You know what they're getting clicks by? Other complainers. And tell me where that's leading you. Tell me the benefit. So I'm going to tell you, do not complain on social media. And some of you may think it's safe to do in a private group, like on Facebook or whatever. It's not private. All it takes is one pissed off member of that group to take a screenshot and post it on another platform, and you are done. You think you want to talk about politics or religion or vaccinations in a private group? One screenshot and your career could be over. So just think about that. Let's see. We got Andrea. Yeah, mindset is key, right? No victim mentality. You've got to be positive. You got to share successes. You got to share stories. You got to share your life. It's got to be somebody, we've got to see you and who you are and what you bring. And once we feel like we know you and we see that positivity, it's what makes us want to hire you. So great point, Andrea. And then the last thing, and I'm going to end on time, hopefully, is the transition doesn't end when you get a job. A lot of people will network their behinds off and they get a job and they're like, I'm done. I've even seen it on some groups, some senior leader groups I'm in. They're like, hey, take me out of the group. I got a job. And I'm just like, oh. Or people saying, hey, my transition's complete. I got a job. And I'm like, see you in a year. Like, except now you're going to be sucking life because you're not going to have a network. You're not this, you're not that. Like, you disappeared. So people know it was only transactional. Your whole life should not revolve around getting a job, right? So what I'm going to tell every one of you is that when you leave the military, your unit's not going to check up on you. You might have an individual check up on you, but there's a certain point of time where you're no longer a part of that mission, no longer a part of that unit. The people there aren't going to check with you. They still got their things to do. They're people to take care of. So you need to build the network and sustain the network that's going to sustain you. And that's not just for the job search. It's for the things that life throws at you. It's for the downs. It's for the ups. It's for the times you have challenges. And I talk about people. I just got to a point now where I don't have this urge to yell at someone that's walking around without their headgear on. 7 years later, almost. I don't do on-the-spot correction anymore. I don't tell people I'm a sergeant major when I meet some random service member, right? Unless we're having beers somewhere and we're talking about what we did, So, this is all part of this transition of life. And so just understand that once you're out, it is more than just this job. And that you need a community that's going to sustain you, that you can sustain, that's going to be with you. And that's how you continue to find happiness after service. You find purpose. It doesn't have to be purpose in job. It can be purpose in community. And so I'm just going to remind you all that, really focus on finding a core group of people that are going to stay with you after you get out and that are going to be there for you when you realize your life isn't just about work. Think about that. All right. I got my trusty pen. I'm 2 minutes late again. Dang it. But I will respond. I'll check the question up here. I'll let you know who I'm going to provide that session to. And I'll see you next week.